Good day, everyone. We are Group K,
and we will be discussing
Renaissance Literature.
In order for us to be guided, let me present to you our objectives. At the end of the discussion, the students are expected to achieve the following with at least 75% proficiency level. First, understand the origin and the defining characteristics of the Renaissance literary movement. Second, identify the themes and styles of the Renaissance literary movement and their representative authors. And last, appreciate the impact of the Renaissance literature on modern thoughts.
Hello everyone, I will be discussing the beginnings of the Renaissance movement. So what exactly was the Renaissance? The word Renaissance itself derived from the Italian word renascita, which literally means rebirth. And the French people adopted and popularized the term. The term rebirth wasn't a literal beginning of something, but a revival, a reawakening of interest in the classical world. Renaissance refers to the emergence and new interest in classical Greek and Roman texts and culture that took place between Middle Ages and modern period. This means that the Renaissance was a period of renewed focus on classical Greek and Roman culture, bridging the Middle Ages and the modern era. In addition, the European people also look back to the achievements of classical antiquity to forge a new path forward. So where do you think the Renaissance movement originated or started? The Renaissance movement started in Italy, then spread slowly to other European countries, most notably France, Spain, and finally England. To deeply understand the Renaissance movement, we need to look at what came before it. We need to understand the precursors, the event that set the stage for this incredible rebirth. And unfortunately, those precursors were deeply tragic. First, let's talk about the Great Famine. It happened from the year of 1315 to 1317, and much of Northern Europe suffered from widespread crop failures and starvation. Then, in the mid 14th century, came the Black Death, one of the deadliest pandemic in human history. This pandemic wiped out an estimated 30 to 60% of Europe's population. It was a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. The Black Death had a profound impact on European society. It caused widespread fear, social breakdown, and economic disruption. But it also paradoxically created some of the conditions that allowed the Renaissance to flourish. But how? Well, the massive population decline led to labor shortages, which gave peasants more bargaining power and helped to weaken the feudal system. This pandemic also challenged traditional religious beliefs and encouraged a more secular worldview. And with fewer people, there was more wealth to be distributed, which allowed for increased patronage of the arts. So while the Great Famine and the Black Death were devastating events, they also acted as catalysts for change. They helped to clear the way for the Renaissance, a period of renewed creativity and innovation. Now that we have learned the precursors of the Renaissance movement, let us now know where exactly this movement originated. The Renaissance originated exactly in Florence, Italy. The Renaissance flourished also because of Medici family. This powerful and wealthy family were also based on Florence, Italy. And being powerful and wealthy, they are known for their generous patronage. They were famous backers of the movement and supported public art for recognition, for the love of beauty, and also to legitimize their wealth. Their support was very critical and important since artists generally only began working on a certain project after they had received their commissions. And the beneficiaries of this generous patronage are Michelangelo, Botticelli, and Leonardo da Vinci. I will present to you their works. The presented image is Michelangelo's The Creation of Adam. Next, we have Botticelli's Birth of Venus and Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Now let's discuss the Renaissance period in England. English Renaissance dated between the 16th and 17th centuries long after its origins in Italy in the late 14th century. Now, you might be wondering if the Renaissance began in Italy in the late 14th century, why did it take so long to reach England? Think about it. What could have caused that delay?
Sir, maybe because of its geographical distance.
That's right. One of the main reasons was simply geographical distance. England is an island and it was further removed from the initial centers of Renaissance activity in Italy. Additionally, the English Renaissance really took off during the reign of King Henry VIII, which marks a significant point of change in England's history. Now, while the Italian Renaissance was famous for its visual arts, like painting and sculpture, the English Renaissance was dominated by literature and music. Literature in particular became the central vehicle for the development of Renaissance ideas in England. Now let's discuss the several key factors contributed to this literary boom. First, the invention and widespread use of the printing press made books more accessible, spreading knowledge and ideas like never before. Second, the translation of the Bible into vernacular English, most notably the King James Version in 1611. It had a profound impact on the English language and culture. And third, the advent of Reformation. With its emphasis on individual interpretation of Scripture, it fueled intellectual debate and literary production. Now let's talk about some of the key contributors to the English Renaissance. First, we have Edmund Spenser, a master of epic poetry. His masterpiece, The Fairy Queen, is an allegorical epic that explores themes of virtue, morality, and English national identity. And of course, no discussion of the English Renaissance would be complete without William Shakespeare. Shakespeare's plays like Hamlet explored complex human emotions, philosophical questions, and the nature of power, leaving an enduring legacy on English literature and theater. The English Renaissance, though arriving later than its Italian counterpart, was a period of extraordinary creativity and innovation, particularly in the field of literature. It helped to shape the English language and culture in profound ways. And that's all for the beginnings of the Renaissance movement. I hope you have learned something. And now to discuss to us the defining characteristics, themes and styles of the Renaissance movement, let's have Miss Kayla Nuñez. Kayla, take it away.
Thank you, Timothy. Good afternoon once again. After knowing the origin of the Renaissance literature, we will now proceed with its defining characteristics. First, we have the revival of classical themes from ancient Greece and Rome. It's about studying classical texts for the purpose of gaining wisdom. Because during the Renaissance, scholars looked back at ancient Greek and Roman ideas in order to improve their understanding about the world. It also encourages the study of subjects such as history and moral philosophy. Why history? Because they believe that studying the past can help to improve the present and the future. Next, an emphasis on humanism. It means that there is a focus on human reasoning and education rather than just religious studies. For the third one, we have focus on individual potential. This emphasizes the unlimited potential of an individual and that individual could shape their destinies through knowledge, creativity, and effort. Another one is the use of vernacular languages. What do you think is the importance of using vernacular languages in the Renaissance literature? That is right. You said that using vernacular languages is important because it will make literature be more accessible to people and help spread new ideas. In addition to that, the use of vernacular languages breaks the dominance of Latin because Latin is the language used by the church and scholars during the Middle Age. Last, we have the cultural and social commentary. It is the time for reflection on society, politics, and religion. This is also about the literary pieces or the literary works that are being used as a means of influencing political thoughts, societal norms, and the religious aspects as well. Therefore, writers here shape ideas such as governance, ethics, and individual rights. In short, literary works are used to analyze, critique, and influence the cultural and social structures during that time. Before we proceed, is there something that you want to clarify? Okay, can we now proceed? We will be having an activity, and your task here is to arrange the jumbled letters in order to come up with the themes of the Renaissance literature. Is that clear, everyone? You have 5 seconds to answer. Ready? The word is antiquity. It's individualism. The answer is faith in reason. Education. Thank you for your participation. We will now continue with our discussion. We have here 4: antiquity, individualism, faith in reason, and education. Antiquity first. This theme in the Renaissance literature refers to the revival of classical learning, and it is also about the Renaissance writers who are exploring a broader range of themes or the secular and philosophical elements. Since writers during the Middle Age often glorified the Catholic Church as well as its teachings, the Renaissance writers rediscovered these themes. Another theme is individualism. Can someone explain this as one of the themes? Thank you for your idea. It's really about an individual. Because Renaissance literature reflected the potential of an individual in shaping his or her own destiny. In addition to that, Renaissance literature shifted from relying totally on the wisdom of the church to developing understanding and appreciation for an individual. Next is faith in reason. Scholars and writers embraced rationalism and skepticism. Skepticism is a concept which means that certain knowledge is uncertain. So, in the context of the Renaissance literature, it is about questioning religious findings and seeking truth through reason. But even though this somehow challenged the teachings of the church, it's not actually about being against your faith, but it's about trying to strengthen it by providing reason. Last, we have education. How did Renaissance emphasize the importance of education? Yes, education during the Renaissance literature was emphasized by using it as a tool for intellectual growth and self-improvement. Through the widespread use of printing press, the knowledge became more accessible because they believed that education aimed at creating new man, and it is considered it as essential to humanistic idea since it has the ability to reshape or reconstruct society through learning. That's all for the themes of the Renaissance literature. Do you have any questions so far? If none, for the styles we have vernacular, irony, satire, and utopia. Vernacular. As I mentioned a while ago, Renaissance put an emphasis on using vernacular languages. Therefore, writers began to move away from Latin to reach a wider audience. Next is irony. Can you still recall what's the meaning of irony? Yes, this can either be verbal or situational. When we say verbal irony, it's about saying something but the meaning is opposite, and situational when there is a contrast between expectation and the reality. And the irony is a style used to highlight contradictions, to expose hypocrisy, and to add depth to the storytelling. We now come to the third style used in the Renaissance literature. It is satire. It is another technique that uses sharp humor to point out human vices and follies. One of the famous authors using this style is Desiderius Erasmus. He used this in his work, The Praise of Folly. It is a satirical work which is about the corruption of the church as well as the foolishness of the human nature. Lastly, utopia. Thomas More is known for his work entitled Utopia. It is about an idealized society, and he used this work to critique real-world issues and, of course, inspire societal change by creating a new and imaginary society that address problems in a different way. Now we have here the good questions. These are the questions that you should answer when creating a literary critique using the Renaissance literary movement. That's all for my part. Thank you everyone for listening. Now to discuss to us the representative authors and their works, let's have Miss Ocaña.
Thank you, Kayla. So now let's move on to the representative authors in Renaissance literature. So the first author is Elizabeth Carey, a poet and a playwright born on October 20, 1585 in Oxford, England, and died on August 25, 1639. She was a multilingual and translated a lot of works while composing her original piece. So she became a multilingual because in her childhood she received an exceptional education which was uncommon for women at that time. Her father also ensured that she had access to extensive learning, and she showed a remarkable talent for languages from an early age. So Elizabeth can speak Latin, Greek, Hebrew, French, and possibly Italian. Her linguistic skills allowed her to engage with classical, religious, and philosophical texts, influencing both her translations and original works. She is also credited as the first woman to write a play in English, and her writing style is characterized by its intellectual depth, exploring of complex moral and religious themes, and the powerful voice that challenged conventional gender roles. And her most famous work is the Tragedy of Mariam. It is a closet drama, meaning it was intended to be read rather than performed. And the story revolves around Mariam's struggle for agency and independence in a male-dominated world. So, the play explores themes of power, gender, and morality, focusing on the historical figure Mariam, the second wife of King Herod the Great. So the themes in this play can really be seen in how the way she writes. The second author is Miguel de Cervantes, a Spanish writer born in Alcalá de Henares, Spain on September 29, 1547. Cervantes also served as a soldier in the Spanish army to help defend southern Europe from the invasion of the Ottoman Turks. So in 1575, he was captured by Barbary pirates, which is the Ottoman Turks, and held as a slave in Algiers for 5 years. And when Cervantes is sailing back from Naples to Spain, their ship was attacked by the Barbary pirates, which is the Ottoman Turks. They took him as a valuable hostage, believing that he was an important figure due to the letters he carried, and held him for ransom in Algiers for 5 years. After returning to Spain, he struggled financially, working as a purchasing agent for the Spanish Armada and later as a tax collector. So Cervantes faced financial struggles when after he returns to Spain because he did not receive significant rewards for his military service or ransom ordeal. And now let's move on to his writing style. So his writing style is characterized by satire and humor and realism and psychological depth. In satire and humor, he used irony and wit to critique Spanish society, literature, and human nature. In realism and psychological depth, his characters, especially Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, are deeply human, with complex emotions and contradictions. And now let's move on to his writing style and his major work. So, Cervantes' writing style is characterized by satire and humor and realism and psychological depth. In satire and humor, he used irony and wit to critique Spanish society, literature, and human nature. In realism and psychological depth, his characters, especially Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, are deeply human, with complex emotions and contradictions. And his most famous work is the El Ingenioso Hidalgo Don Quixote de la Mancha, or the history of the ingenious gentleman Don Quixote. So, or simply Don Quixote. So, Don Quixote is a satirical novel about a man who believes that he is a knight and sets out on absurd adventures. So, this novel is a mix of comedy, tragedy, and deep philosophical reflections about idealism versus realism. Um, Don Quixote reflects on human nature, the tension between fantasy and reality, and the complexities of identity and purpose. The third author is Desiderius Erasmus. He was born on October 27, 1466 in Rotterdam, Netherlands. He is a Dutch philosopher, scholar, and Catholic priest, considered one of the greatest humanists of the Renaissance. He is considered one of the greatest humanists in Renaissance because of his scholarly contributions, advocacy for education, and emphasis on classical learning and Christian reform. He was also a leading figure in Christian humanism, promoting the study of ancient texts, particularly Greek and Latin works, to improve both secular and religious knowledge. Erasmus also produced a New Latin translation of the New Testament. He wants to emphasize a return to original biblical sources, which greatly influenced religious thought and the Protestant Reformation. So, his commitment to reason, tolerance, and intellectual freedom solidified his legacy as one of the most influential thinkers of the Renaissance. Erasmus' writings is characterized by satire and irony and humanist scholarship. So, satire and irony, he used humor and wit to expose corruption, ignorance, and hypocrisy, especially in the church. Same with Cervantes. So, in humanist scholarship, his works were deeply influenced by classical Greek and Roman texts, focusing on education and moral philosophy. So, his most famous work is In the Praise of Folly, or Morae Encomium. So, it is a book that humorously criticizes various aspects of society, including the Catholic Church, scholars, theologians, and corrupt clergy. Another work of Erasmus is the Adages. It is a collection of classical proverbs. The fourth author is Niccolò Machiavelli, an Italian diplomat, philosopher, historian, and writer best known for his political treatise The Prince. He is often regarded as the father of modern political science because he analyzed power dynamics, statecraft, and realpolitik with a pragmatic and realistic approach. So I know you have an idea what pragmatism means. Anyone who wants to share? Okay, very good. So um, pragmatism means making choices based on what works best rather than strictly following moral or ideological beliefs. So, meaning instead of strictly following moral or ideological principles, he advises rulers to make decisions based on what is most effective in maintaining control and securing the state. His writing style is direct, analytical, and pragmatic. So Machiavelli presents his ideas in a clear and straightforward manner without unnecessary embellishments. He takes a logical and critical approach, breaking down political and military strategies with sharp analysis. He also his pragmatism is evident in how he focuses on practical solutions rather than idealistic theories, offering realistic and sometimes ruthless advice on power and governance. Machiavelli's works includes discourses on livy, the art of war, and the prince, wherein it all advocates for pragmatism. So, in discourses on livy, he supports republican governance but still emphasizes the need for leaders to be adaptable and sometimes harsh to preserve the state. Similarly, the art of war, where he advocates for the strong military and strategic planning as essential tools for maintaining order. In The Prince, it is a political guidebook on power and leadership, advocating for pragmatism over morality. The fifth author is Christopher Marlowe. He was an English playwright, poet, and translator of the Elizabethan era. He was one of the most influential figures in early English drama because of his innovative use of blank verse, complex characters, and bold themes that helped shape the English Renaissance stage. Um, he is a contemporary of William Shakespeare, meaning they lived and wrote during the same time period in the late 16th century during the Elizabethan era. Christopher Marlowe also introduced the blank verse. Do you still remember what is blank verse? Blank verse is? Okay, very good. So, what is a blank verse? Okay, good, thank you. Blank verse is a type of poetry or writing that does not rhyme but follows a specific rhythm. It is written in iambic pentameter, which means each line has 10 syllables and alternates between unstressed and stressed beats. So Marlowe Marlowe's works often explored themes of power, ambition, and supernatural. His writing style is known for its dramatic intensity, bold themes, and powerful use of language. So, in dramatic intensity, his plays often feature high-stakes conflicts, ambitious protagonists, and tragic downfalls, creating emotional tension and excitement. In bold themes, Marlowe explored themes of power, ambition, fate, and the supernatural, often questioning traditional religious and moral beliefs, as seen in Dr. Faustus. And powerful use of language. He mastered blank verse, using it to craft rich, expressive monologues that gave his characters depth and grandeur. So, his most famous works is Dr. Faustus and Tamburlaine the Great. So, Dr. Faustus is a tragic story of a man who sells his soul to the devil in exchange for knowledge and power, while Tamburlaine the Great is a two-part play about the rise and fall of a powerful conqueror, Tamburlaine, who is based on the historical figure Tamerlane or Timur, a 4th century Central Asian warlord. The sixth author is Sir Thomas More. He is a prominent English lawyer, philosopher, and statesman, as well as a leading figure of the Renaissance. He is best known for his work Utopia. More also served as a Lord Chancellor of England from 1529 to 1532. He served as a Lord Chancellor of England because he was a trusted advisor to King Henry VIII and a highly respected legal and intellectual figure. He is also a devout Catholic, seen as a defender of traditional Christian values, which initially aligned with Henry's views before the split from the Catholic Church. More refused to recognize Henry as the supreme head of the Church of England because he is a devout Catholic who firmly believed that the Pope was the only rightful head of the Church. He also rejected the validity of the king's new marriage to Anne Boleyn because he believes that, according to the Catholic beliefs, Henry was still married to Catherine in the eyes of God. So More's writing is characterized by humanist thought and satire and irony. Because of his deep engagement with Renaissance humanism and his critique of society. So, as a humanist, he emphasized reason, morality, and justice, advocating for a more enlightened and ethical governance. His major work is Utopia. So, Utopia is More's most famous work, which presents a fictional dialogue about an ideal society on an imaginary island. It is written in Latin, and the book critiques the social, political, and economic issues of 16th century Europe. The seventh author is Francois Rabelais, a French Renaissance writer, physician, and humanist. His works blend humor, fantasy, and deep intellectualism, making him a key figure in Renaissance literature. His writing style is characterized by satirical and grotesque humor and humanist thought. So, by the use of this style, he sought to both entertain and critique society. His works, particularly Gargantua and Pantagruel, use exaggeration, absurdity, and crude humor to mock the corruption of the church, the legal system, and outdated medieval traditions. His satirical approach allowed him to challenge authority and provoke thought while avoiding direct persecution. At the same time, Rabelais was a Renaissance humanist promoting education, critical thinking, and the pursuit of knowledge. His works celebrate intellectual curiosity and human potential, reflecting the ideals of classical learning and reason that defined humanism. Rebellious works influenced later satirical writers including Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travel, and Voltaire's Candide. So his most famous work is Gargantua and Pantagruel that tells about the adventures of the giant Gargantua and his son Pantagruel, using satire, comedy, and fantasy to critique society, religion, and politics. Okay, we now move on to our last author, which is William Shakespeare. I know that Shakespeare is already familiar to you. Can you give some literary works wrote by him? Very good, thank you. So, Shakespeare is an English playwright, poet, and actor often called the Bard of Avon. He was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, England, and married Anne Hathaway and had 3 children. He is widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and one of the world's greatest dramatists. He regarded as the greatest writer in English language because of his profound impact on literature, language, and theater. His works, including tragedies, comedies, and histories, explore universal themes such as love, power, betrayal, ambition, and the human condition, making them timeless and relevant across generations. Shakespeare's mastery of poetic language, wordplay, and dramatic structure set new standards for storytelling. He wrote 39 plays, 154 sonnets, and 2 long narrative poems. He also invented over 1,700 words that is still used today. His plays are divided into 3 sections: tragedies, comedies, and histories. Hamlet, Macbeth, and Othello is some of the examples of his tragedies plays. A Midsummer Night's Dream and Twelfth Night are also some of the examples of his comedies plays, while Henry V and Richard III are some of the examples of his histories plays. His plays explore themes of love, power, faith, and betrayal, and the human condition. His writing style is characterized by the following features: blank verse and rich and poetic language. Blank verse is influenced by Marlowe. And rich and poetic language, Shakespeare used metaphors, similes, wordplay, and vivid imagery to create expressive and memorable dialogue. His language adds emotional depth and helps convey complex ideas in a beautiful and artistic way. So in blank verse pala, it gives Shakespeare's plays a natural yet elevated flow. Let's move on to his major works. First have his tragedies plays, which is the Hamlet and Julius Caesar. So Hamlet, it is a play about the Prince of Denmark seeks revenge for his father's murder, leading to madness, betrayal, and existential questions. Julius Caesar, it is a political drama about the assassination of the Roman leader Julius Caesar and the resulting chaos in Rome. So in comedies, we have A Midsummer Night's Dream and Much Ado About Nothing. So A Midsummer Night's Dream is about a magical tale of love and mistaken identity involving fairies, lovers, and mischievous sprite Puck. Much Ado About Nothing a romantic comedy full of witty banter, mistaken identity, and a battle of sexes between Beatrice and Benedict. And the last one, the history's play, includes Richard III and Henry V. So Richard III is about a historical play about the ruthless rise and fall of the manipulative King Richard III, and Henry V. It is a patriotic drama about King Henry V's leadership and triumph at the Battle of Agincourt. And that's all for my part. Thank you for listening. And now let's have Mr. Timothy Valiente to discuss to us the sample critic.
Now let's discuss the sample critique of the Renaissance movement. Hamlet really shows us a lot about the Renaissance, a time when people look back to old Greek and Roman ideas. First, the play uses old stories about revenge and heroes, just like the Greeks and Romans did. Here, the idea of a hero seeking revenge for a wrong done to them is a very old story. Hamlet uses this idea, which was popular in classical plays. The presence of a ghost demanding revenge is also a classical element. Now let's proceed. Second, Hamlet is a big example of a person thinking for himself, which was important in the Renaissance. He thinks deeply and questions everything, especially in his famous to be or not to be speech. So here, the Renaissance was a time when people started to focus more on individual thought and the importance of human beings. Hamlet's constant questioning and his deep inner thoughts, especially when he's alone on stage, show this new focus on the individual. The to be or not to be speech is a perfect example of his internal struggle. Now let's proceed. Third, Shakespeare wrote in everyday English, not Latin, so everyone could understand it, which was a big change from the old days. Here, in the Middle Ages, most serious writing was done in Latin, which only educated people could read. During the Renaissance, writers started using their own language, like English, so more people could enjoy their work. Shakespeare's use of English made his plays very popular. Let's proceed. Fourth, Hamlet's time at school shows how much the Renaissance valued learning. But it also shows that learning can make you think too much. So here, education was very important during the Renaissance. Hamlet's education at Wittenberg, a famous university, shows this. However, his deep thinking and questioning also lead to his indecision and suffering, showing that too much thought can be a problem. So let's proceed. Fifth, the play makes fun of the people in the court, showing how they're greedy and dishonest. It doesn't say exactly how to fix things, but it shows that things need to change. Here, Shakespeare uses satire, which is a way of making fun of people's flaws, to criticize the corrupt behavior of the people in the Danish court. He shows how they are motivated by greed and power. While he doesn't offer specific solutions, he implies that society needs to be more honest and ethical. So let's proceed. Sixth, Hamlet doesn't show a perfect world. It shows a world with problems, where people do bad things. It talks about like death, revenge, and how hard it is to know what's right. So Hamlet shows us both the good and bad sides of the Renaissance, with its love of old ideas and new ways of thinking. Here, unlike some stories that present idealized version of society, Hamlet shows a realistic and often dark world. It explores difficult themes like death, revenge, and moral ambiguity. This reflects the Renaissance focus on human experience and the complexities of life. The play shows that even during a time of great progress and new ideas, human flaws and societal problems still exist.
That's all for the Renaissance literature. I hope you learned something because here in the Comco, we listen, communicate,
And collaborate. And we make your dreams